COVID-19 continues to ravage our lives beyond what we could have ever imagined 2 years ago. And rightfully, most of us might have asked ourselves at some point about whether all these interventions that are in place to control the spread of the disease are really necessary. The lockdowns, the closures of town, the vaccines, whether all these are necessary. And to answer this, I looked at COVID-19 numbers and ran them against malaria. So the first metric that I look at is the route of transmission, and whereby I believe that it's much more difficult to prevent or to avoid the transmission of COVID-19 versus avoiding the insect bites of malaria. I don't believe so many people would be willing to stay at home just out of simple altruism to prevent transmitting the disease to others. The second metric is the famous R naught. So basically, the number of people that one sick person would be expected to infect. And for COVID-19, we know that's 3. Malaria, we know that's around 114 in the off seasons, and up to 3,000 in the peak seasons, especially in high burden areas like in northern Uganda. How to prevent COVID-19? We know SOPs have practical issues that most of us have to be forced by the security forces. The vaccine is controversial, whereas in malaria, the control of vectors and avoiding bites is actually something I consider doable. Then what is called the incidence by the epidemiologists. That is how many people get infected, and I was looking at a month. COVID-19 is around 0.5 per 1,000, and malaria will be around 40 times that. The risk of hospitalization from COVID-19 is known to be around 20%, whereas it is 45% in malaria. So this is probably one I believe that many people would be interested in. How many people, what's the percentage of people that would be expected to die? From the best of evidence, it's around 0.3% risk of dying from COVID-19, around 0.45% risk of dying from malaria. So you see, even if you see the numbers of malaria as though they are so high, but the actual risk of dying from malaria is actually not as high as you'd imagine. And we'll visit this later. The financial cost of hospitalization from COVID-19, I consider it to be significantly way higher than that of malaria. How much is known, way little for COVID-19 versus that of malaria. Old people with comorbidities are the most at risk people for dying from COVID-19, and but we very well know that everyone is actually at risk of dying from COVID-19. Malaria, usually the most vulnerable populations are children under 5 and people that are geographically located near places that harbor many mosquitoes are most at risk of contracting and dying from malaria. The burden to the health system can considerably be much higher in COVID-19 compared to the malaria, even if you consider the seasons of highest transmission. So this is a more practical numbering this is a more practical example from the Ministry of Health records. 4,000 people died of malaria in 2019, and this is a reduction from since 2013. There's been a considerable reduction up to this point. And if I was imagining if COVID was left for people to develop herd immunity in a way, how if so many people were infected and recovered to get immunity to protect the rest who are not have never been infected. And So for Uganda, if you consider the 70% of the total population of Uganda, which I took for 45 million people, that means COVID-19 would need to result into 31.5 million infections before people can develop herd immunity. This would translate to around 20% or 6.3 million hospitalizations, with a considerable burden to healthcare and considerable cost to both individuals and the government. Deaths, taking the death rate at 0.3%, this would ultimately translate to 94,500 deaths before there is herd immunity. And yet, so far, we know that we do not know actually how long this immunity lasts and how effective it is against the other variants of COVID-19 that always emerging. So, for those who are not looking at the 96,000 versus 4,000, that's around 23 times the number that dies from malaria each year. Or put another way, COVID-19 would need to kill the same number of people that malaria would kill in 23 years, of course at the current rate, for herd immunity to develop. And we need to also see that these would die in a way shorter time compared to the time that it takes for people to die of malaria. So I feel like the comparison of COVID-19 and malaria is sort of to see what's worse. And I appreciate that how we interpret the above numbers is entirely up to you. So largely, what is worse is actually an academic question. Practically, it wouldn't matter what one dies of. I don't know if you ask me what would I rather die of, malaria or COVID. I think the best answer would be I would rather die of none, because it wouldn't matter if I died of malaria or COVID. Plus, we need to see that COVID deaths wouldn't necessarily reduce malaria deaths. In fact, the effect would just be additive, probably, or even compound to further worsen the numbers of people that are dying. So I firmly believe that despite the temptation, we need to continue listening to the experts, including the political experts, of course. Political experts have always been inseparable with the health experts from the start anyway. And I'll make a video about this in the coming days. And we need to listen to these experts who have been making the decisions ever since anyway. And I believe that this is a time to survive and not a time to struggle to be heard. Thank you very much, and I would like to hear what you have to say about this. Kindly leave me a comment, kindly share this video, and feel free to subscribe to get any of these videos when they come in. Thank you very much, and stay safe.